Coming up, the Disney war is officially back on as Nelson Peltz releases a statement reigniting the proxy fight. Bob Iger takes the stage at a New York Times summit where he talks about the state of Disney creative and the messaging in Disney's content. Elon Musk fires back at Bob Iger for boycotting advertising on X. And the Hatbox Ghost finally materializes at Walt Disney World's Haunted Mansion, and we've heard this isn't the last of the upgrades coming to the attraction quite soon. All that and more on the way. This is Mickey Views News.
All who come to this happy place, welcome.
Now I'm the king of the swingers, oh, the jungle VIP. I've reached the top and had to stop, and that's what's bothering me.
First up in the news today, before we get to the Iger versus Chapek versus Elon stuff, all of whom were key characters in this publicly televised event, which was held on Wednesday. It was quite the spectacle, if I do say so myself. You may have already seen some stuff from it if you've been on social media at all this week. It's important to establish the backdrop and set the stage in terms of what's happening right now at the Walt Disney Company, which is really influencing everything that we are seeing. To begin, for the first time in over 3 years, the Walt Disney Company is issuing a dividend to investors of 30 cents per share. Shareholders of record on December 11th will receive a payment in January at that price per share. And to give you context on that, the last dividend that Disney announced was in December of 2019 at 88 cents per share. So the dividend being issued here, it is significantly less than the last one, the pre-2020 levels, what those looked like. Of course, it's better than the 0 cent dividend that investors of Disney have been receiving the past 3 years. But accounting for inflation, this dividend is 68% lower than the pre-2020 payouts that Disney was doing. Here we can see, despite the financial strain that Disney's under, they are trying to make a show to the investors that, hey, we're getting back to normal here. You can trust us. We know what we're doing. You can trust the current board, the current leadership. Things are on their way back up. We got it all under control. And in another move to boost investor confidence, Disney announced that they are nominating 2 new executives to the Disney board, which Disney's activist investor, who is starting a war with Disney, Nelson Peltz, he even says that these 2 nominees are an improvement to the status quo, but also adds they, quote, will not, in our view, restore investor confidence or address the root cause behind the significant value destruction and missteps that this board has overseen. Peltz's firm, the Trian Group, announced yesterday they had made contact with Disney's CEO, who offered a meeting between Trian and the Disney board, but turned down Trian's request for board representation. So the deal here is you have a group led by activist investor Nelson Peltz and the former Marvel chairperson Isaac Perlmutter, and they are not big fans of Iger. They own approximately $3 billion of voting stock in the company, and they want to take control of the board, or at least have a say in it. And this is because they feel Disney is being mismanaged, highlighting in their new statement that Disney shareholders have lost approximately $70 billion in value just in the time since Trian's last attempt in February to get on the board at the last annual meeting. Disney, led by Iger, they have no interest in Peltz or Perlmutter having a say in Disney's affairs. So Trian says that they intend to take their case for change directly to the shareholders. This sets up a proxy fight heading into Disney's 2024 annual meeting, where Disney is nominating their 2 new board members that they want to see shareholders approve of, and Trian is going to push for shareholders to upset the apple cart and vote to add Trian folks, the likes of Peltz and Perlmutter, to the board and switch things up. What exactly Peltz and Perlmutter want out of Disney? It's actually relatively obvious. They want money. They want to see the share price rebound. They have billions and billions tied up in this company, so they definitely want to see a return on their investment. The reason they're not working cooperatively with Disney is they fundamentally feel that the current board's plan to fix the company and get things back on track, that it's not effective, that basically there's not enough change happening, and there's a lot of political differences between this faction and the current establishment that you have at the top of the Walt Disney Company. So this is the backdrop heading into this proxy season and the big vote that'll be tallied at the annual meeting early next year. On Wednesday, Bob Iger took to the stage at the New York Times DealBook Summit. This is a summit where many of America's leaders were present and they were interviewed. So Iger gets up there and right off the bat, he says that since his return to the CEO spot a year ago, it's ended up being much more challenging than he expected. He refuted the reporting that I think a lot of us have believed, that he never really wanted to leave. He says that he actually really did want to leave and the time was right. You know, here's the thing. We know that Iger kept his office throughout Chapek's tenure. We know that for most of Chapek's CEO term, Iger was still chairman, and there were all sorts of meetings happening where CEO Bob Chapek was not allowed in. So it really didn't seem like Chapek was really in charge. But Iger says, no, a lot of this reporting's inaccurate. He really wanted to leave. That's why he left. He wanted to go do other things. But in that 9 months where Chapek was fully in charge and Iger was out, Iger's attitude changed.
I was disappointed in what I was seeing, both during the transition period when I was still there and while I was out, but I really worked hard at distancing myself from it because, one, I couldn't do anything about it. In a way, it wasn't my business.
To the degree you think that Bob Chapek was a mistake, I assume you imagine it's maybe one of your biggest.
Well, first of all, I'm not the only one that may have considered it a mistake. The board obviously had its issues with Bob.
I think we can all attest to the fact that it wasn't just Iger who wasn't happy with Chapek's leadership. If you recall, we were not happy either. I think a lot of us were not happy at all. Chapek did a number on the parks in particular during that period, which we are still dealing with now with Genie and things like that. So I am in agreement with Iger there. On the question of succession, Iger said that they are going through a rigorous process finding his replacement and that he's really going to leave in 2026. He's not going to extend again. He's promising us that he's really done this time, but he would not elaborate on what exactly is going on with the succession process. Something many took issue with in Iger's rationale up on stage during this interview was, for a lot of Disney's current problems, he was just blaming stuff on Chapek. And it was stuff, a lot of it, that didn't really seem like it was really Chapek's fault at all. For example, Iger was saying that the balance sheet was bad when he came back. The balance sheet was bad under Chapek. We know a big part of that is due to Iger's acquisition of Fox, which required Disney in that historic period where the parks weren't open, they had to keep servicing this debt that whole time, which created issues for Disney, which were totally of Iger's creation there. Iger admitted that the recent films, they aren't performing very well, and they've made too many sequels, they've over-milked Marvel, and they've made too many shows for Disney+. Something very pertinent to our discussions about Disney these days: why does Disney seem to be losing attendance? Why are they losing audiences? Iger has many times, and continues to during this interview, blame much of the box office underperformance in particular on the idea that less people are going to the movies now due to streaming and just a general shift in behavior since the lockdowns of 2020. He's got all sorts of explanations, like how animated movies, people would rather wait to stream those, watch them at home. But Iger, how do you explain the Mario movie, which did really well, or that Minions movie that also did insanely well? Why is it that the Haunted Mansion and Indiana Jones live action films based on beloved intellectual properties performed so terribly for you, yet other franchise sequels from other studios like Top Gun Maverick during that same difficult period, that period that he calls difficult, that did amazing at the box office? It smashed records across the board and overperformed blockbusters from the pre-lockdown times. We've seen a lot of this from Iger of late. You'll recall months back where he blamed stagnant Walt Disney World attendance partially on humidity in Central Florida. For some reason, the other years, the humidity wasn't really a factor and people were still coming in droves. After some of these explanations, which really don't seem to explain why Disney in particular is underperforming versus other studios which are doing much better, Iger did admit they are facing creative issues at the studio, which he attributes mostly to overproduction, which resulted in lack of quality, as well as them making sequels that should not have been made. It was then that the moderator shifted the conversation and he brought up the names Peltz and Perlmutter, to which Iger said,
"Do you think this is personal? Do you think that this is, what is this?"
This is not a headline that I'm going to create right now.
And then the issue of political messaging, the politicization of Disney's content was raised, and Iger had a surprising take, I thought anyways. Here's what he had to say.
I think what had happened over a period of time, it was building and building, and maybe it reached a peak of some sort while I was gone, is that creators lost sight of what their number one objective needed to be. Entertain, and if you can infuse it with positive messages, have a good impact on the world, fantastic. But that should not be the objective. When I came back, what I've really tried to do is to return to our roots, which is, remember, we have to entertain first. It's not about messages. If you can do, again, if your story can have a positive impact, so there's that. And I've worked hard since I've been back at reminding the creative community, who are our partners, in some cases our employees, that that's the objective. And I don't really want to tolerate the opposite.
So it seems there like Iger, who is the one who's overseen this period where Disney has become more divisive as a brand, and there's a lot of people who don't like Disney anymore. He seems to be adopting some of Peltz's and Perlmutter's points and that same attitude where we should be about entertaining folks more than, putting in a message. That's a secondary aim. That's not something that we should be focused on. Iger's detractors argue that this is Iger. He's adopting Peltz's positions on purpose to weaken Peltz's position heading into this upcoming proxy fight. If you recall, the last proxy fight, the last Disney war, Peltz's big promises were he was going to bring back the dividend, he was going to cut expenditure at Disney, they were going to become more fiscally responsible. And in the year since then, Iger has done both of those. He's implemented those to a large degree with $7 billion in cuts on spending, and also, as we just talked about, bringing back the dividend. And that is definitely not a coincidence. Very interesting stuff going on here. Now we get to what I think is the most entertaining out of this summit that we had on Wednesday, because it's just so over the top. Iger was asked about Elon Musk, of all people, and Disney pulling their ads off of X, formerly known as Twitter. And mind you, this is moments before the owner of X, Elon Musk, who is in attendance here at this event, takes the stage himself. So we got a bit of an in real life battle of the CEOs, which is pretty crazy. Check this out.
I mentioned X, and we're going to see Elon Musk in a little bit. You stopped advertising on X.
We did.
Tell us about that decision.
I have a lot of respect for Elon and what he's accomplished, and not just, one business, but a few businesses. And we know Elon is larger than life in many respects, and that his name is very much tied to the companies he either has founded or he owns, whether it's Tesla, or SpaceX, SpaceX, or now X. And by him taking the position that he took in quite a public manner, we just felt that the association with that position and Elon Musk and X was not necessarily a positive one for us, and we decided we would pull our advertising.
So that concluded Iger's comments on the Musk situation, which, by the way, the controversy underlying that is beyond the purview of a Disney news channel. But Elon's response here, specifically to Iger, singling out Iger, is definitely something that qualifies as Disney news. So we definitely have to cover that here. So what happens is that Elon takes the stage and he talks about the controversy that he's currently embroiled in, which resulted in Disney pulling their advertising along with many other companies. And here's the thing, is that Disney is a huge advertiser on social media. So this is at a minimum a single-digit hit to X's income, which might not sound crazy, but for a company the size of X, a single-digit hit, one company pulling their ads, and then a bunch of companies are doing the same alongside Disney. This is a big hit to X's income, and it takes a ton of money to operate X because basically everything happens on this platform. There's lots of people using this service. It requires tons of money to operate, and now the money they have coming in has been greatly reduced by companies like Disney in response to Elon's recent behavior, which Elon takes very personal, as he feels that the reason they pulled their ads off was not warranted. And you'll see here why I say that he takes it very personally. You've probably already seen this. And by the way, this is a family-friendly show, so we aren't entertaining any foul language or anything like that. So there are going to be parts of what he says here which are omitted, but I think you will get the gist. I think you'll get the tone of it and what his message to Iger is.
But there's a public perception that that was part of a apology tour, if you will. That this had been said online. There was all of the criticism. There was advertisers leaving. We talked to Bob Iger today.
I hope they stop.
You hope?
Don't advertise.
You don't want them to advertise?
No.
What do you mean?
If somebody's going to try to blackmail me with advertising, blackmail me with money,
But
is that clear? I hope it is. Hey, Bob, if you're in the audience.
well, let me ask you then.
That's how I feel.
Crazy times we live in, guys. This was followed by Elon saying, hey, if the platform collapses because of this advertiser boycott, which very well could happen, we'll all know who was responsible. It's the folks like Iger who pulled their advertiser money, which the moderator then refutes and says, well, a lot of people are going to say, no, it's because of your behavior that they did that, and it's your fault if it all falls apart, if it all fails. And that's when it all came back around to Disney. Watch this.
I just wonder and ask you and think about that for a second.
Tell it to the judge.
But the judge is going to be...
The judge is the public.
And you think that the public is going to say that Disney is making a mistake?
Yes.
And they're going to boycott Disney?
They already are.
So it appears Elon's up to date on people boycotting Disney. I found that pretty interesting. Now, I've even said, boycott Disney to some extent. But when I say boycott Disney, I'm talking about, if we all hold back giving Disney money for subpar stuff like Jollywood Nights, which wasn't fully thought through. They need to do a lot more with it. In exchange, if we hold back our money, it forces Disney to actually compete and try harder. They have to improve the product. They have to improve the pricing of the product. We all stand to gain, if we sort of just hold back our wallets a little bit, right? But there's another type of Disney boycott, which seems to be taking off. And it's much less about, pushing Disney towards making their product better and a lot more just sheer malice, just hoping that the company collapses, which is very notable. And I think the rising levels of public consciousness of the issues at Disney. Recently, there was that South Park episode that people keep talking about. I haven't seen it, but there's a lot of this happening where it's just talking a lot about what's going on at Disney, and I think it's making a lot of normal people that really aren't into all the nitty-gritty inside baseball stuff at Disney like we are, they're becoming more aware of the situation. And Elon just going right after Iger here directly, something that so many millions and millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people saw this, it's pretty crazy. And then you also have Peltz, who's trying to take over the board. And we know for sure a lot of that is about getting Iger and his ilk out of there. Let's be real. I really believe that's Isaac Perlmutter's goal. It's really worth covering this stuff here on the channel, even if mostly I just cover infrastructure projects in Orlando, because when we're covering infrastructure projects in Orlando and we're covering investment at Walt Disney World, it keeps coming back to this question of where is the money? Where is the funding? Where's the executives' focus? Where's the fan sentiment at? What are normal people saying? What's their thought process? What is their attitude towards Disney? And in all those respects, we are seeing things heat up and become increasingly volatile just in the past few weeks. And I think this will continue to ramp up, especially going into Disney's annual meeting. So we will continue seeing how this unfolds. Last up in the news today, in a much deserved reprieve from the Disney wars and all the drama, something that most fans would definitely say is an unambiguously good thing. On the very last day of November, you'll probably recall Disney promised us late November, the Hatbox Ghost has finally materialized in the Haunted Mansion at Walt Disney World inside the Magic Kingdom. This is a project years in the making. It was one of several projects that we were actually supposed to get as part of the 50th anniversary celebration. There was a whole list of attraction upgrades they were going to do at the Magic Kingdom in time for the start of the 50th anniversary, which ended up getting shelved. And we have a list of some of those other originally planned enhancements on our blog post on mickeyviews.com when we reported on this story yesterday morning. So check that out if you want to know more about perhaps some other attraction upgrades that could be in the pipeline right now. The Hatbox Ghost is a storied character in Haunted Mansion history and, Disney lore. It's really a Disneyland thing, but now we have the Hatbox Ghost at Walt Disney World as well. And it's a really cool effect. He looks quite good, I would say. Some Haunted Mansion fans out there are upset with his placement during the attraction, as now there is a happy haunt that appears before Madame Leota summons the Happy Haunts. That's sort of the plot that's been ascribed to the Haunted Mansion. But on the other hand, you have other Haunted Mansion fans who say now with the new lore that was established in the new film, this actually makes sense, because I think they made the Hatbox Ghost an unhappy haunt. I've been hearing, I haven't actually seen the new Haunted Mansion film, but in my opinion, I ascribe to the general notion that, you know, a lot of these classic attractions that you have as part of Disneyland that were ported over to the Magic Kingdom, they weren't supposed to have a plot, particularly when it comes to pirates and the Haunted Mansion. What you have with these is a bunch of interesting scenes with a very distinct mood. It's a vibe, as the kids would say. It's something where you're completely immersed in this other world and you really get to make your own story out of it. And that's exactly what many Haunted Mansion fans have done. And now they have to figure out how to work the Hatbox Ghost in all of that, who was placed early in the attraction due to infrastructure reasons. There were infrastructure reasons that he was put in this part of the attraction in particular. It was not possible to put him in the attic scene, actually, due to the nature of Walt Disney World's Haunted Mansion. That's what I'll say on that. I was worried based on the concept art that he would be super bright and obnoxious and overshadow this entire first part of the ride. He's right past the hallway with the floating candelabra during the attraction, but he's really not too bright. I think the Imagineers, they got it just right on the lighting front, and he looks really, really good. And we've been hearing that some other enhancements to the attraction are on the way. That's all I can say for now. I'm very sorry, but there is some other stuff in the works, some new magic that they want to add to this attraction, the Haunted Mansion, as well as some others around the Magic Kingdom. Just in the past few months, they've upgraded Madame Leota on the Haunted Mansion, and they've also added some new props from Rolly Crump's original vision for this experience. It's always a great day when we get to see an existing attraction receive an upgrade. It's rare we get to see it, but it's always good when we do see it. And there's lots of other rides that Imagineering wants to plus in a similar matter in the near future, but it's up to Walt Disney World President Jeff Volley to greenlight those. So let's hope that he does so. That's the latest news in the world of Disney today. Be sure to subscribe with those notifications on to stay up to date on the latest happening. As I said, it's a volatile time heading into this board election season and the annual meeting. We'll see how this all shakes out. Be sure to check out the Mickey Views store if you haven't already. We are doing our grand opening celebration. Today I'd like to highlight some of our film photo print stuff. So here is the luster print of a certain geodesic sphere. This is a very high quality print. Now this is the framed version, which is more expensive, and it's balsa wood and plexiglass on the front, which is better for shipping. Personally, I actually prefer glass. So what you can do is you can just get the print, which is cheaper, just the print alone. And then you can, if you're in the United States, you can go to Michael's or a craft store like that and get one of those sales. And you can get a pretty cheap 12 by 18 frame like this, which has a very thin bezel and has real glass on the front. And this is the other print that we are selling. And this is a matte print over here. And I think you can tell even over the interwebs, this is a very, very nice piece of art to have on the wall. I have this hanging up in my office, and it's awesome to look at while I'm working on these videos. But according to our viewers, what they've been buying so far, I've been noticing a lot of the interest has been in the film photo coaster prints, the prints on a coaster. These are super, super vibrant. These turn out really, really good. I noticed a lot of people have been getting those. And we also have some folks who have been getting this mouse pad. This is a mouse pad, which is a pretty good thickness. It's not super thin, super cheap, or anything like that. And this is also something that you can pick up over at mickeyviews.store. And also as part of our grand opening merch drop, you get 10% off at checkout with code GRAND. So be sure to check that out if you haven't already. And thank you so much to all of you who've been supporting the channel, just watching the videos even. It really means a lot. I really hope that you guys are having a good holiday season so far. We're now in December. Very, very exciting. For the Mickey Views Magic Studio, this is Brayden. Have a magical day.